is an institute that has been serving the West African democratic institutions
to support them in the process of harmonizing their standing orders.
Pushing an agenda for post-legislative scrutiny.
We have graduated at CSET.
Things actually have changed.
Be approved, say aye. Those against say nay, the ayes have it.
The legislature is the backbone of democracy. It is said that when you take away the legislature, you no longer have a democracy. It is the arm of government that ensures the attainment of good governance by providing effective representation for the people in policy formulation and implementation. This is in addition to making laws, authorizing government expenditure for the people, as well as making sure funds are judiciously utilized through its responsibility of oversight.
So I'll just put a question. Those in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. Ayes have it.
It is a fact that the quality and capacity of the legislature more than determines its efficacy and efficiency in performing its functions. To this extent, a support institution that guarantees that the legislature and indeed all parliamentary institutions within the country achieve and maintain globally acceptable practices, receives training and retraining on the technicalities of its functions is a requisite for the growth of democracy. Herein lies the need for the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, Nilds, established primarily to build the capacity of legislators, parliamentary and legislative aides, as well as provide technical support to the legislature in Nigeria, ECOWAS Parliament, and national parliaments in the sub-region and the continent at large. Nilds is also to provide legislative support services to the legislature through the drafting of bills and motions, briefs or documents, and technical output in form of policy analysis, information briefs, research, and statistics.
I, Olusegun Obasanjo,
do solemnly swear.
The journey to where Nilds is today started with Nigeria's return to democracy in 1999, when the Policy Analysis and Research Project (PARP) was established in 2003 with the financial support of the African Capacity Building Foundation (ACBF), with the overall goal of strengthening the capacity of the National Assembly to enable it effectively discharge its constitutional duties of legislation, representation, and oversight. PARP evolved into an institute with the Legislative Studies Act 2011, which was signed by President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. President Muhammadu Buhari expanded the mandate of the institute with the signing into law of the National Institute for Legislative Studies Amendment Act 2017. The expansion broadened the scope of the institute to include the provision of technical and support services to democratic institutions, political parties, civil society organizations, media organizations, and political appointees.
I, Hakeem Olufemi Gbadiabiamila,
do solemnly affirm
that
The impact of Nilds in the development of Nigeria's legislature is obvious, especially with the ever-changing phase of successive assemblies, with a greater number of new legislators coming on board with every democratic cycle.
As it is ready, I so move.
Nilds has therefore been on ground delivering on its core mandate of building capacity of legislators and supporting them in the drafting of bills and motions to effectively represent its people. The Institute is structured to have a Director General, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Institute, saddled with the responsibility of running its affairs. Nilds also has a governing council with the President of the Senate as the chairman and Speaker of the House of Representatives as the alternate chairman. The current governing council of the Institute comprises of the following members: President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, Chairman. Speaker, House of Representatives, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, Alternate Chairman. Other members include Senator Abdullahi Yahya, Senator Philip Aduda, Senator Saidu Alkali, Senator Solomon Olamilekan, Senator Sam Egu, and Senator Degi Biobarakuma. Other members include Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, Honorable Bashir Mashema, Honorable Jimo Olajide Abdul, Honorable Joseph Edionwale, Honorable Ofo Gregory Chukwegu, Chairman, National Assembly Service Commission Ahmed Kadi Amshi, Clerk to the National Assembly Magaji Tambawal, and the Director General of Nilds, Professor Abubakar O Sulaiman, who serves as the Council Secretary. Since its establishment in 2011, the Institute has had two Directors General. Professor Ladi Hamalai, MFR, was the first Director General of the Institute, while Professor Abubakar O Sulaiman became the second Director General of the Institute on the 28th of May, 2019. He is a Professor of Political Science and International Relations, a former Minister of National Planning, and one-time Deputy National Chairman of the National Planning Commission. He has brought his wealth of experience to bear in piloting the affairs of the Institute and repositioning it in the last 4 years. One of the very first tasks the DG undertook with the approval of the Council was to restructure the Institute, increasing the number of departments from 4 to 9. The reason was not far-fetched.
It's an institute that is serving not only Nigeria Parliament, Nigerian democratic actors and institutions. It's an institute that has been serving the West African democratic institutions. We can't operate an institute of this magnitude in terms of services with just 4 departments.
The 9 departments in the Institute as it stands today include the Department of Legislative Support Services, Democracy and Governance, Economic and Social Research, Studies, Training and International Cooperation, Admin and Human Resources, Finance and Account, Internal Audit and Library. How has the expansion through the restructuring of departments in the Institute added to the fulfillment of the mandate of the Institute? Some of the heads of departments as well as staff assess their impact and contributions to the growth and development of the Institute.
The act that established the Institute, Section 2, Subsection 2B, specifically provides that the Institute will act as a center for continued education on democracy and legislation. It was in a bid to actualize that mandate that made the leadership of the Institute to engage the University of Benin on how to mount some postgraduate programs. The affiliation was approved by University of Benin Senate as well as the National Universities Commission, NUC. So during the 2013-2014 academic session, the program took off.
Basically, what we do is to provide legislative support services to members of the National Assembly, both the Senate and House of Representatives. So what we do is to look at their core mandate. pursuant to Section 4 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, that is talking about lawmaking, Section 80, Section 88, 89 of the same Constitution that is talking about oversight, and then other components of representation.
In my department, as the Department for Democracy and Governance in the Institute, we also work with other international donors in planning, in organizing programs such as policy dialogues, stakeholders meetings on issues that arises as time goes.
Apart from the restructuring of the institute, Professor Abubakar O Sulaiman has pursued an agenda since his first year in office that has seen Nilds surpassing set targets in the delivery of its core mandates.
To produce the National Assembly communication strategies
in the area of building the capacity of legislators, parliamentary and legislative aides, Nilds has continued to provide specialized training for legislators and extended such services to the sub-national level through the state houses of assembly and local government councils, organizing training workshops among other capacity building engagement.
When you talk of parliamentary services, capacity building for the parliamentarians, and you try to abandon the state assembly, then we have not done anything. Good governance emanates from the base.
Trainings for state assemblies have been carried out in about 21 out of the 36 states of the Federation, including the FCT. For the first time in the history of the Institute, training was conducted at the local government level precisely for Abuja Area Council officials. Some principal officers of some state houses of assembly bear their minds on the capacity building collaborations between Nilds and their states.
The leadership of Professor Abubakar O Sulaiman has brought a lot of life into the Institute. In fact, they have come out sound and loud now under his mandate with proper collaboration with all state houses of assembly.
We have benefited a lot in the terms of capacity building. They have done massively well. And we have serious improvement, especially those people that came new in the system.
The Institute's Director of Democracy and Governance, Dr. Adewale Aderemi, speaks on some other engagements of the Institute at sub-national level.
We work with the legislatures of Plateau State and Cardinal State to push the Gender and Equal Opportunities bill. It has become an act in Plateau State and hopefully very soon in Cardinal State as well. We have also worked to strengthen the Plateau State GEOB Commission, which was recently inaugurated. We have done a needs assessment for them as a department and on behalf of the Institute. And hopefully, we'll only take this further.
Most of the work done with the state assemblies have been carried out with the support of donor agencies and partners. Working with Conrad Adenauer Stiftung, CAS, all the state houses of assembly today have a uniform standing order.
CAS and Nilds have teamed up to give support to the Conference of Speakers of the State Legislatures in Nigeria to support them in the process of harmonizing their standing orders.
Before now, the various state assembly, they have different manuals. What you call the standing order. What standing order of the Sokoto is not the same thing as Kano. But through our institutes, all state assembly today in Nigeria, they have what we call uniform standing order.
It's a very deserving training and it's targeted towards...
Still on measuring the achievements of Nilds along the line of its core mandates, the Institute has done remarkably well in providing technical assistance to Nigerian parliaments. The director gives a breakdown of how this has been done in the last 4 years.
When you look at the statistics, when you look at the policy analysis and policy brief in the last 4 years, we had 100. When you look at the issue sector data briefs, we have 801. our bill analysis is 703. Then the bills tracking is about 9. Then bill scrutiny, we have 446. Then the motion we have drafted so far in the last 4 years and briefs of arguments is 730. Then we have conducted a lot of research papers, which guides the legislature and even the executive. And we had about 100 research papers so far.
Consistent with its role, the Institute, through the Department of Democracy and Governance, has ushered in the 10th Assembly ahead of its inauguration by organizing an induction program for all the members-elect.
It's a very enriching experience for me. We have listened to a number of presenters and they have touched quite a variety of issues. You don't get all of the information in one workshop or in one day, but it has provided a primer, it has whet the appetite, it has also set some expectations on what we should do and also challenge us to go through some of the material that have been provided. Of course, we do know that the ground norm is the Constitution. We are also aware of some other subsidiary legislation. Some of the presenters have called our attention in that direction. And I think the Secretary has done enough. They have provided us a package that contains some of the material that we require.
The benefits are so many that I cannot even mention. But the most important thing that I would want to mention here, all the resource persons that presented papers were well prepared. They are professionals. Some of them are technocrats, and some of them are well entrenched into the process of legislation. So I think they have done very well. The takeaway that I have from the presentation, they are quite enormous.
Deduction is meant, in my view, not only for freshers, but for whoever you are. There's always opportunity to learn and above all to share experience by allowing people to have the kind of interactive section. So that allows people to ask those things that the lecturer may not have spoken to. I think it's useful.
It's improving every year. I've seen, this is my 5th induction, and there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of knowledge that is being imparted, and there's a lot of information that is being passed on to the senators-elect and the members-elect. I am very happy to be here, and I think the National Assembly is getting it right. We are actually, the National Assembly, Nilds, and the organizers are doing it much better than it was, so it's commendable.
Nilds, through the same department, is also planning a program on post-legislative scrutiny for the 10th Assembly as part of efforts to prepare the legislators to cope with the task of lawmaking.
We also have, a program for the 10th Assembly where we are going to be pushing an agenda for post-legislative scrutiny. And what we want to do as a department, is to move, the focus of evaluation of successive assemblies from the number, of bills they pass to the quality and the impact of bills they pass.
Over 100.
Lawmakers speak on the impact of Nilds in providing technical assistance and capacity building, among others, for members of parliament and the legislature at large.
It's an institution that is well equipped, and we have gained a lot from their expertise.
To measure how impactful a training is, we will only refer to the kind of people who were used to do or carry out this training, the facilitators, and the resource person that was used in this regard. And I must commend them that so far so good. We've not have any cause to regret.
It's not only for them to contribute and put flesh to what I want. They try to do what is called legislative scrutiny to inform me whether that bill is relevant or is not relevant, where it is supposed to be. If there are adjustments that need to be done, this is how it should be done.
This taught me on steps and strategies to undergo when you are doing oversight. But NIS were able to propound about 40 items through which oversight needs to cover. And I benefited a lot.
As Parliament,
The President of the Senate and Speaker House of Representatives, in their capacity as Chairman and the alternate Chairman of Nilds Governing Council, also share their thoughts on the impact of Nilds in capacity building of lawmakers and the legislature as an institution.
Nilds that started quite some time ago when we came to the National Assembly has transformed tremendously. And in fact, it is still going to transform because as our needs as legislators and as parliaments are dynamic, so will be the activities of Nilds.
I am indeed proud to know that Nilds has diligently worked towards fulfilling its vision of becoming a top-tier research and training institution that promotes and supports the development of dynamic, effective, and accountable legislatures and democratic institutions in Nigeria and beyond.
There is no way the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies can make an impact without well-motivated and efficient staff. Little wonder then that Professor Sulaiman has prioritized staff welfare and capacity building since he came on board.
I met a lot of grievances among the staff of the Institute. Issue that borders on stagnations of career progression, issue that borders on staff being on contracts for years without being confirmed, issue that borders on staff being on the same cadre for 7 years, issue that borders on staff not going on training. I address all this.
As part of quality control, Professor Sulaiman, upon assumption of office, ensured that the Institute has an administrative manual, which in other words can be referred to as a documented proper condition of service, a necessary tool for creating a system that works for staff and the Institute.
I set up a committee headed by Baba Hakim Hamid, the former chief of staff to the Senate President. A seasoned, PAMSEC, with other areas of practitioners from other ministry, including Assembly Service Commission, to look into the admin manual and give us something that at least could guide us in terms of condition of service. So they came up with a condition of service, and the novel aspect of it was for the first time, staff were made to make input. They were asked to make input. He's playing a leading role in Africa. By extension, in the defense of his kind in Africa, we must play that role too.
The system in place has inadvertently entrenched staff motivation through training as well as promotion.
Almost everybody is getting promotion because staff are well appraised. So there is promotion as it is when the due.
Improving welfare, quality and capacity of staff has only further strengthened the status of the Institute as an academic institution poised to provide specialized training and manpower to support the development of democracy. Part of the achievements of the Institute in the last 4 years is a more strengthened academic program and Department of Studies.
How do we beef up the quality of our program, the content of this academic program? So the first thing I did as part of my vision, therefore, was to put on what I call Academic Advisory Board. We are not a university, but we should have something that is akin to a university. We should have something that is akin to a senate of the university. So we should have a board, a board in place that will look at our academic content, that will guide us, that will advise us. In our relationship with NUC, with MBTE, with University of Benin, we must have that quality control mechanism.
The Director of Studies at Nilds, Dr. Asimiyu Abiola, gives an insight on Nilds' academic session and enrollment procedures.
Currently, we are in the 9th academic session. We have graduated about 6 sets. So far, our total enrollment so far is around 800. We have graduated about 500.
Truly, the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies is making its mark in the growth and maturity of Nigeria's democracy. From the ingenuity of restructuring the organization into a more purpose-oriented institution to the foresight of entrenching legislative excellence across local government, state and national levels, Professor Abubakar O Sulaiman has earned the reputation of an achiever with a mission of giving Nigeria, ECOWAS, and indeed the continent of Africa legislative and technical support towards growing democratic institutions. Most of his successes can be attributed to the 15-point agenda, which he has tenaciously pursued since he unveiled the document when he clocked 100 days in office. Part of the agenda recognized the need to get donor agencies to partner with the Institute in rendering its required services and delivering on its mandates, a vision he has pursued tenaciously and with obvious results.
I visited some donor agencies. I went to United Nations, UNDP. I visited the UN Women. I visited the Malaysian Embassy, the Chinese Embassy, the German, the KS. And today I can tell you that this thing has really, has been very rewarding, because today we have about 7 donor partners that are working with us. They have been partnering with us. They have been doing well with us. We have had so many sessions with them. Some of them have even brought their resources in terms of funding to key into our programs.
The Director General also points out that his experiences as a former minister, former Deputy National Chairman of the National Planning Commission, and a professor of political science and international relations have been very helpful in the discharge of his duties, including getting donor agencies to partner with the Institute.
In political parlance, I want to call personality factor in politics, or personality factor. Some will call it personality factor, some will call it leadership factor. Even when you are negotiating in an international negotiation with another country, the personality of your parties at that negotiation will go a long way in you getting results. So my background as a former minister has aided our accomplishments in the last 4 years.
Stakeholders in some of these donor agencies speak on the kind of partnership that exists between their organizations and Nilds, as well as some of the ways they have collaborated with the Institute for greater impact.
Now, Nilds and CAS have gotten to know each other more closely in 2019, and this is when, after preliminary talks, the decision was being made to collaborate. This was in 2019. Now, we all know that COVID came, and then we had the lockdown and several restrictions. So the first time that we were able to conduct a program together, an activity, was in 2020. Now, with the mandate that CAS has and the mandate that Nilds has, the main focus of our collaboration lies on training as the State Houses of Assembly, but also the National Assembly. So since 2020, we have conducted these trainings together.
The National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, NILDS, is an organization that WFD has been working with for a while now in the implementation of our activities. I remember I told you that WFD globally has been working, to promote the advancement and growth of democracy. We want a process where every citizen will be involved and their voice is heard in the governance process. And there is no other institution that is worthy of this than the Nilds.
In line with collaborating with donor agencies, Professor Abubakar Sulaiman has also led Nilds to seek partnership with other parliaments across the globe.
Wir begrüßen, dass eine Beamtendelegation der Nationalversammlung der Bundesrepublik Nigeria unter der Leitung des Generaldirektors Herrn Sulaiman hier im Parlament begrüßen dürfen. Herzlich willkommen Die Delegation wird in dieser Woche einen Studienbesuch
One of such engagements has made Nilds to secure an exchange program between the Nigerian and the Austrian parliaments aimed at developing legislative processes in Nigeria. This happened when Professor Sulaiman led a delegation of researchers and National Assembly management staff on a study visit to the Austrian parliament in order to exchange experience in readiness for capacity development for the 10th National Assembly.
I want to believe that come by October, our parliamentarians who are just coming in will be able to learn a lot from Austrian people.
We as Europeans, we want to work with you. Don't forget that. Yeah?
The media, among other stakeholders, have also been a worthy partner of the Institute.
Journalists are one of the few people that are employed and unfortunately are left to their devices without periodic training. And parliamentary reporters in most cases are the worst hit, and that is where news comes into play. And the Director General of Nilds, under the able leadership of Professor Abubakar O Sulaiman, I must say, has been there for us. He's been there for us. We've had it that good since his position there as the Director General of Nilds in terms of training and retraining of journalists.
Drumming up support for the Institute has also taken Professor Sulaiman to the doorsteps of traditional institutions, especially given the role of traditional institutions in achieving stable democracy and good governance. One notable instance was the visit by the Institute to the Ooni of Ife, Oba Adeyeye Ogunwusi.
A body like yours in Western world play a very pivotal role, even beyond training the legislators.
Professor Abubakar Sulaiman sheds more light on why traditional institutions and leaders like the Ooni of Ife are important to the development of democracy.
We're into advocacy too. People must know. So we need the traditional rulers, institutions to partner with us in driving our agenda, in driving our targets, in driving our goal. So we have some interface with the Alayelua, the Ooni of Ife, on so many, issues that borders on our federation, which I wouldn't want to expose now.
Extending the scope of its reach beyond the parliament, the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies has been a veritable partner in shaping the nation's electoral process through active observation and analysis of the electoral process.
We are here today in terms of issue of e-transmissions of votes. We are here today in terms of funding of campaigning. Where we are today in terms of election security. I should let you know that our institute has made remarkable input in all these areas.
Strengthening the capacity of the executive arm of government is an initiative of Professor Abubakar Sulaiman. To achieve this, the Institute set up a committee for the Advanced Executive Education Program chaired by a Nilds consultant and former chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC), Professor Atahiru Jega. The committee has submitted its report.
It's my great pleasure and honor to submit this report to you. Thank you.
The chairman of the committee and Nilds consultant, Professor Atahiru Jega, speaks more on the program.
For a long time, our leadership cadre, whether at the top management or executive cadres, go abroad for such training purposes. And Nigeria does have the capacity
to develop competitive advanced executive leadership programs. And already Nilds has been partnering with some of the best global institutions, whether they are centers or institutes or even universities. And we believe that whether in partnership with those global partners or on its own, relying on Nigeria's domestic capacity, drawing from our own institutions and tertiary, particularly tertiary educational institutions, we can develop a program that can be globally competitive.
Professor Jega speaks further on how the program stands to be globally competitive.
And I say globally competitive, because you can get the same knowledge and the experience and get the certificate and get value for money. So rather than, for example, our own people going abroad and spending valuable foreign exchange, with relatively less, at relatively less cost, they can still get the same knowledge that is competitive with the knowledge they can get in other institutes abroad.
The contractor, they are back to science.
A major thrust of Professor Sulaiman's agenda in the last 4 years is changing the narrative on the perception of Nigerian legislature. Deepening understanding on the role of the legislature is yet another. Professor Sulaiman has in the last 4 years designed strategies to achieve this. One of these is a platform called the Distinguished Parliamentarian Lecture Series. The initiative provides a forum through which past and serving parliamentarians can address issues of national interest on a regular basis and chart a course for the development of the country. The first of the lecture series was delivered by the President of the 9th Senate, Senator Ahmed Lawan, on the 13th of December 2021, while the second was delivered by the Speaker of the 9th House of Representatives, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, on the 12th of December 2022 at the International Conference Center, Abuja.
The three arms of government, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, the legislature is more representative of the people or citizens than the other two arms. And therefore, providing a platform like this one is a golden opportunity for exchange of ideas, a marketplace of ideas for the legislature to tell its story, but also for the legislature to listen to the people it represents.
We have passed landmark legislation to fix our oil and gas industry, reform the police, and reorganize the corporate administration system in our country. We have considered and passed meaningful legislation impacting all areas of our national life.
Professor Abubakar O Sulaiman gives a hint on what to expect in the forthcoming third Distinguished Parliamentarian Lecture.
The third one is coming this year, hopefully, and that one, perhaps, you may likely see a parliamentarian from any of the West African sub-region to deliver a lecture.
Still towards entrenching knowledge of the legislature and democratic processes and practice, the last 4 years has seen the Institute expanding its 7-year-old quiz competition for secondary schools from being organized for schools in the Federal Capital Territory to becoming a national quiz competition open to all secondary schools in Nigeria.
I met that initiative on ground. I sustained it. In the last 4 years, we have had 3 under my own stewardship, making 6. But the most interesting thing is that what we used to have before was quiz competition within the FCT alone. But last year, precisely last year, September, October, I've forgotten precisely the month, we had a national quiz competition. So I think it's a way of getting the younger one, the youth, imbibing the ethics of democracy, dialogue, let them know what the parliament are doing, how laws are being made.
I've learned more from this competition, so that is what I've achieved during the course of the competition. I really want the organizers to continue these things, to also enlighten young students like us on legislative matters.
While pursuing all of this, Professor Sulaiman has always maintained that the story of the legislature, its impact, trials and triumphs, can only be best told by an institute that thoroughly understands it. Hence, his unwavering determination in establishing the Nilds Democracy Radio. First, on Wednesday, the 24th of May 2023, the Nilds Legislative Center for Security Analysis and Nilds Democracy Radio 104.9 FM were commissioned by the President of the 9th Senate, Senator Ahmed Lawan. Speaking at the commissioning, the Director General of Nilds, Professor Abubakar O Sulaiman and Senator Ahmed Lawan expressed their views on the importance of both the center and the radio station.
We hope that these two outfits, the legacy of the 9th Assembly, will be of greater relevance to deepening democracy, stimulating public interest in legislative businesses, and further provide useful information to the Parliament on security-related sectors. It is on this note, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, that I wish to specially thank the President of the Senate, His Excellency, distinguished Senator Ahmed Ibrahim Lawa, PhD, GCON, the Speaker of the House, His Excellency Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, CFR, and the entire Government Council of Nilds for their continued support, dedication, and commitment as true patriots and promoters of democracy who are determined to consolidate the practice of democracy in Nigeria and strengthening the legislative institution.
It is my great pleasure to welcome all eminent personalities present to witness the official commissioning Legislative Center for Security Analysis and Nilds Radio 104.9 FM. This is one of the laudable achievements of the 9th National Assembly through its think tank institution, the Nilds.
For all of these, the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies requires a befitting structure from which to operate. It is towards this end that the project for the permanent site of Nilds was conceived. Located at plot C00307 Umar Musa Eradua Expressway, Airport Road, Abuja, the permanent site occupies an area of over 80,000 meters square. The edifice has now been completed and was commissioned by the former President Muhammadu Buhari on the 25th of May 2023. Speaking at the commissioning, former President Muhammadu Buhari described the permanent site of Nilds as a magnificent complex that has the potential to significantly boost the capacity of the legislature in Nigeria and Africa at large.
The National Assembly and State House of Assembly stand to perform their constitutionally assigned mandate better when provided with all the required resources. The National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies permanent site, therefore, is a critical first step towards bolstering the capacity of the legislature to improve its lawmaking, oversight, and presentation functions. In 2018, I signed the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies Amendment Bill into law, thus expanding the mandate of the Institute to provide capacity not only to legislators but also to other political actors. This edifice would enable the Institute to better meet its expanded functions. It is my expectation that the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies will utilize this site to provide targeted capacity building to legislators, political parties, and civil society to enable them better respond to changing circumstances.
Earlier at the commissioning, the Institute's Director General, Professor Abubakar O Sulaiman, welcomed the dignitaries to the historic event.
The magnificent structure was initially meant to be commissioned sometime in the year 2019. Issue bordering on outstanding liability to the contractors made it impossible. However, I want to appreciate Mr. President, who through the Ministry of Finance ensured the settlement of the liability. Today, therefore, mark an opening chapter in the history of the Nigerian National Assembly, as its only statutory think tank institution now parade a convenient academic environment conducive for learning, training, and research in legislative and other democratic processes.
The leadership of the 9th Assembly, who were notably present at the commissioning, also commented on this achievement by Nilds.
I have personally visited this permanent site on 3 different occasions since being elected as the Speaker of the 9th House of Representatives. During one of such visits, I brought with me the Minister of Finance and other top government officials to acquaint them with the different components of this massive project and its potential to enhance the capacity development of legislators, political appointees and office holders, as well as parliamentary staff and legislative aides. This is even more critical in view of the expansion in the mandate of the Institute to extend its services to political parties, civil society, media, and other democratic actors.
This is not only for National Assembly members, Nilds. No, it is for all Nigerians. And we're pleased to see people from the executive arm of government coming to take some lessons in Nilds, because that will help. That will help in understanding of what the National Assembly or Parliament does. Also for us in the 10th National Assembly, having suffered serious and massive casualties of not having or losing about 70% of our senators and members of the House, it means we have to work hard on capacity building for the rest of us who will be new in the National Assembly. So this is an apt time to have Nilds permanent site commissioned, and then Nilds will have to hit the ground running, because there will be many who will need the capacity building that will be offered by Nilds.
The last 4 years for Nilds have been defining, building a stronger democracy through building the actors while expanding the scope of impact to all institutions that remotely play a role in shaping the legislature and democracy. The leadership of the National Assembly commends Professor Abubakar O Sulaiman for providing the stewardship for these achievements.
While I must express utmost gratitude for the privilege and trust conferred on me to lead the 9th National Assembly and serve as the chairman of Nilds Governing Council, I must recognize and appreciate the visionary leadership style of the Director General of Nilds, Professor Abubakar O Sulaiman, who has committed himself to ensure that Nilds enjoys his pride of place as a leading beacon of research, excellence, transformative knowledge and innovation.
Professor Sulaiman's training and the Institute has done is to sharpen and hone in the skills of members in terms of lawmaking, in terms of bills drafting, in terms of
things that you can't even learn on the streets or within the four walls of any classroom. And he's been able to do that successfully.
Staff of the Institute attribute the successes to the quality of leadership and stewardship of Professor Abubakar O Sulaiman in the last 4 years.
With the coming of the DG Abubakar O Sulaiman, things actually have changed, more especially in the admin. It made our admin easy to work in such a manner that staff were sent for training. Almost every staff of admin has enjoyed a foreign training.
For me, I can describe him as a transformational leader. You know, he is someone who, for me, possesses some of the most important attributes of leadership.
Our DG, in a nutshell, has distinguished himself succinctly as a transformational leader.
I was the best intern and I got employed after the whole internship program, and I have been applying all that I have learned in my job now, and that's really helped me a lot, and I'm very grateful to the DG and the entire institute for the chance to be able to learn all that I have learned during the internship.
It's been 4 years of purposeful, strategic and constructive steps towards set targets, and 4 years of meeting and beating goals. One major contributory factor to these achievements for Professor Sulaiman is the support and cooperation of the leadership of the National Assembly, as well as the entire Governing Council.
My gratitude goes to the Governing Council in the last 4 years. As I'm running on my first term, I can't say thanks, any other person beside Allah that has given us the wisdom, the sound earth to paddle the ship, but again, the leadership, the Senate President, the Speaker, the Governing Council, the management of the Institute, and most importantly, the ever-resilient, hard-working staff of the Institute.
It is said that the reward for faithful stewardship is more responsibility. Following his excellent performance as the Director General of Nilds in the last 4 years, Professor Abubakar O Sulaiman was on Friday, 31st of March 2023, reappointed as the Director General of Nilds for another 4-year term. The reappointment takes effect from May 28, 2023. With the numerous accomplishments recorded so far, the last 4 years may seem like Professor Abubakar O Sulaiman had reached the peak, whereas for him, this is just the beginning of greater things to come for the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies.